Mr. Culver had a daughter, Carol, was in my class in school. And an interesting thing, she was later as far as I know, she never married. But later, she'd gone through college and she went back to Hazel Park schools and she taught Spanish class, also to all the classes that came through there. And Diana had her for, I don't know, a couple of years anyway, I think. 4 years, she said. She had her for 4 years in Spanish class. And recently they tore down the elementary school that my kids went to after I went through there. I went through there 6 years, and the kids went through there for a few years until we moved out from Hazel Park to Auburn Hills. And she had Spanish class in that school from Carol Culver. She's a real sweet lady.
What was the name of the school?
United Oaks School is the name of the elementary school. And recently, this past, I think it was this past May, a year ago, they tore down they were tearing down, the process of tearing down the old United Oaks School, and they'd already built a new one right on the same property. And I saw Carol there, and Diane and Connie were with me, but not right at that moment that I saw her. If I'd have thought of it, I'd have been introduced them, Diana and Carol, because Carol had been her teacher for 4 years. But I saw her there, and she still looks the same as I remembered her, and a real sweet lady. But I don't know how she learned Spanish, but she must have learned it pretty good to be teaching it. But she had an older brother named Monk, I remember him. But Mr. Culver was a nice man, but what I liked about him, he'd buy anything we had. It always had some value. And so we always knew we could get enough for a bottle of pop and a candy bar at least, and when we were little kids. But that was just one interesting thing. This is all a part of growing up in a small town and during the Depression years.
Did you learn how to play golf at Brooklands? You might want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know where Louis got this 5-iron, but Louis was 8 years older than I was, and when I was 12, he gave me a 5-iron. And I always had a couple of golf balls that I found out at the golf course. And I'd go over in the woods nearby and hit that ball back and forth. And so I started caddying when I was 11, and they said on Mondays, we'd turn the course over to the caddies. The caddies can play golf on Mondays. So when I was 12 years old, I started playing golf. I had a younger cousin, Jack Scott, who was always a great athlete. He had a 2-wood, we called it a brassy, and a kid had a putter, an old beat-up putter, wooden handle putter. He said, "I'll sell you this for a dime." So I put a nickel in and Jack put a nickel in. And so we had a 5-iron and a 2-wood and a putter. That was enough. That's all the clubs we needed. We played golf for 2 or 3 years out there with just a couple of clubs plus that little old beat-up putter. And we both learned how to play golf out there. He turned out to be a real good golfer later on. He shot in the 70s all the time. I could get in the 80s, but I never did get in the 70s. But he was a great athlete. But it was fun, just knowing that every Monday, if we wanted to, we could play golf free at a real nice golf course. We had one golf course that cost, I think, $a quarter to play at first. It was 13 Mile in DeQuinder. It was the worst course you ever saw in your life. They called it happy hour. And we spent many happy hours there playing golf. You could play for a quarter. So that's where we learned to play that. And the name of the golf course was Brooklands. The reason they call it Brooklands, I believe, is it had so many creeks in it, wound all through the golf course. Almost every hole had water in it. And they just tore that down this past year. Just last fall, they started building homes on there. Beautiful, probably $400,000 to $500,000 homes on this course. They built that was at South Boulevard, and which is 20 Mile Road in John R. That's where the course was located, between John R. and Rochester Road, and between 20 and 21 Mile Road. 21 Mile Road is Auburn Road, and 20 Mile Road is South Boulevard. But in that mile, the south part of it, they were building homes this past year, and this year they're going to finish it, complete it. There'll be at least 200 or 300 homes, I think, in that area. They'll all be new homes.
Didn't you used to get rides from one of your uncles that rode a
Yeah,
truck?
he drove we used to hitchhike, we'd stand in the corner of 9 Mile and John R. and hitchhike out to 20 Mile and John R. So that's 11 miles, we'd have to get a ride. And once in a while, a gravel truck would just come by and even on a green light, he'd stop. And if he'd see us boys, he had several cousins. There'd be Jack Scott and Bun and Bull Scott and myself. And a little later, Kenny and Topper Scott. But if Uncle Tom Scott, he was a brother of John and Walter Scott. We called him Uncle Tom, even though he wasn't really our uncle. But if he'd see us boys, he'd say, "Glenn, you jump up here in the cab with me," and two of us would jump up in the cab with him, and the rest would get up and back in the back. The gravel pit was out at 19 Mile and John R. And he would do, "This is as far as I go, boys," so we'd have to walk the last mile. But we thought nothing of that. Bunch of kids would walk a mile in just a few minutes, and he'd drop us off there, and then if we happened to get lucky and go home early, once in a while we'd get a ride back with him, or he or somebody, one of the other drivers. But he was a wonderful guy. In fact, all the Scott men were real nice men. But we'd get rides. Sometimes we'd get a ride and they would only go on 3 or 4 miles. Then you'd have to walk a mile or two and be thumbing a ride and get another ride for 3 or 4 miles. Sometimes it'd take you an hour to get that 11 miles from 9 Mile to 20 Mile Road. So as you can see, we did a lot of walking in those days. Our legs were in wonderful shape. And luckily, my mother never worried about me. For some reason, she never worried. I was going all day. It never bothered her to let me hitchhike. A kid hitchhiking 11 years old now would be unheard of. You wouldn't even think of it. But I wasn't that big. But I do remember when I weighed 112 when I was 12 years old. Which I guess now is considered fairly good size. But I know boys now that are 12 that weigh 130. But back in those days it was fairly good size for that age. In fact, we have a grandson now that's 13. David's son is Patrick. He's 13 and I believe he weighs 79. He's the most active boy I've ever known in my life. He's on the wrestling team, the football team. Now he's out for track and he plays soccer. He's so good at soccer he plays on a traveling team. He plays in a league that they travel all over. He's been to Chicago and he's been to Ohio different times. But they are the busiest kids I've ever known in my life. And Megan just turned 16 on April, this is April 7th I think, on April 5th, 2 days ago. She had her 16th birthday. And she has her own car now. I think it's a 2000 Saturn. It's either 1999 or 2000 Saturn, which is remarkable just to have a car when you're 16 years old. But she's been driving for a year on a permit, as long as her parents are in the car with her. So they're really, really nice kids and are so active.
Didn't you have a car when you went in the service?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear two things: the car that you left, and the golf clubs.
Oh
I
yeah.
was thinking the same
Okay.
thing.
I had a 1939 Plymouth that I'd purchased when I had worked at the tank arsenal. And a friend of mine, he was a half a year ahead of me, Kenny Cloutier, was assistant pro out at Warren Valley Golf Club in Dearborn Heights. And I visited him one time, and in fact I spent the night with him out there. He had his own room, and he said, "Why don't you spend the night with me?" So I called home and told my folks I was going to spend the night with Kenny Cloutier, and they said, "Okay." So he said, "I've got some golf clubs here, Glenn, that I can really give you a good buy on." So I bought a beautiful set of clubs. I forget what I think they were $100, but it was a beautiful set of clubs and a nice golf bag. And I had plenty of golf balls, so I played golf all the time until I went into service.